By the way, America's oceans are not quite the security buffer they might have been 100 years ago. And so the U.S. is planning to develop a new missile defense system. President Trump is calling this new system the Golden Dome and saying it will be completed by the end of his term. That would be pretty quick. If and when it's completed, the administration says the system would be able to detect and intercept missiles that target the U.S. using satellites and other space technology to do so. And while the White House has drawn inspiration from Israel's very famous Iron Dome, don't expect an exact replica. We're a very bigger place. Here's what President Trump has had to say about this effort.
Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. As you know, we helped Israel with theirs, and it was very successful, and now we have technology that's even far advanced from that.
So critics of this idea, they have centered their criticism on the issue of practicality, also the technical feasibility of this, questions on that, and the potential to further what is already an arms race, and also the cost. This is going to be pricey, will not be cheap in the slightest. President Trump has said it will cost $175 billion, while the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, their estimate is that the Golden Dome will cost as much as $500 billion over the next 20 years. Joining us now to talk about all of it is General Frank McKenzie, former commander of U.S. Central Command. General, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your service. I can't think of a better person to help educate us on this idea. I think the first question is, where are you on the do we need this point? Do we need a Golden Dome?
Well, first of all, it's great to be with you here this morning, as always. I do think we need it. I do think it's the right decision. I do recognize that there are technical obstacles that are going to have to be solved going forward. But this is not the first time we've looked at this problem. We looked at it in the 60s. We looked at it in greater intensity in the early 70s with the Safeguard Sentinel system to defend parts of the United States. The Russians defend Moscow today with an ABM system that most people don't track. So there's a lot of technology out there. Some of it has worked, some of it has not worked. We have interceptors in Alaska today prepared to be launched against a potential North Korean attack on the United States with an ICBM. So we've done a lot of work in this field. The cost is certainly a daunting thing, but on the other hand, the ability to defend the United States against a nuclear attack, not necessarily a massive Russian attack, but an attack from North Korea, an attack from Iran, a potential attack from a country like Pakistan who's working to develop an ICBM. Those are all things that I think are feasible, and I think certainly are worth the cost that would be necessary to work the system.
General, is it possible to protect a landmass that is as large as the U.S. and even Canada is interested in possibly getting involved in this? And how does it work? Will there be are we going to have weapons in space?
So here's the thing. The time to intercept a missile is when it launches. When a missile launches, we call that the boost phase. Its rocket motors burn for about 2 or 3 minutes. It's in a highly predictable flight path. It cannot maneuver. It cannot deploy what we call penetration aids, which it can do later in flight to spoof our radars. So that's when you want to get after something like this. And to do that, you really have to go into space. You have to have a space-based system to do that. And that's very possible. We've looked at this at different times. So you have to think about, you're not necessarily defending South Carolina with a system in South Carolina. You're putting something on orbit that would give you the early warning and would give you the capability to strike these systems. Now, of course, that gets after the ballistic missile system component. There are other ways to attack the United States, cruise missiles and things such as that, and that's more of a traditional air defense problem. But the real technical challenge is going after the ICBMs, and I would argue a space-based approach is the way to do it, because again, you can get them early in flight. Once they get late in flight, their engines stop, they coast, they begin to descend against the United States. At this point, they're traveling very fast. They can deploy systems that make it hard for our radars to see them. And they're aided by a number of other things as they re-enter. So you want to get to them before they get to that phase. I would hope that's where our thinking and our science is going to take us as we work this problem.
General, quickly, because we're running out of time, China's officials have said that this is a bad idea because it raises the stakes and could lead to escalation.
And an arms race.
And an arms race. You know, we're already developing lots of military technology. I would say the arms race is already happening. Do you think that, we're calling it defensive, their allegation is, by doing this, we are weaponizing space further and leading to the chance of more aggression in the future?
Well, actually, it's kind of humorous that the Chinese would talk about militarizing space, since I would guess they've done more work on militarizing space than any other nation in the world. I would argue this is an inherently defensive system, and it designed to protect the United States from attack. Yes, could it launch another spiral of offensive developments to try to break through? Certainly, that's possible, and I recognize that's a possibility. Having said that, I still think it's an objective worth pursuing, and I agree with the president's decision. I think it's a smart call.